The war scroll of the Cathari Dominion listed 164 star systems brought to heel, and the High Marshals aboard the Citadel of Grasping Suns saw no reason Earth would become 165 in anything but name. Admiral Varek stood before the strategy pit, where holograms painted a blue-green world spinning in the Orion Spur, and listened to the intelligence singer drone through humanity's leaked transmissions. Radio phase leakage, fission signatures, split-planet conflicts, maximum hull alloy tensile rating laughable. The singer's throat sac pulsed dismissively. They call themselves human. They have no orbital ring, no collapse weapon signatures, no mind-link networks. They are infants shouting into the dark. Varek's amber gaze narrowed. His carapace, scarred from the Threlm pacification, caught the amber light of the tactical dome. And yet they reached their moon with chemical rockets and stopped there. That feels incomplete. Fear, the singer said. Many species stall before the cost of leaving their nest. Perhaps, Varek allowed himself the faintest prickle of satisfaction. 164 conquests had taught him that caution was a spice, not a meal. He gestured, and the pit displayed the fleet he had shaped for this annexation. 300 warships, 8 Harbinger-class breakers, 12 troop-laden world eaters, enough firepower to turn a continent into a memory. The Dominion's method was elegant because it was absolute. They arrived. They broadcast the song of acceptable kneeling. If the planet refused, they erased a city as a lesson. If the planet still refused, they erased its atmosphere. Varek had erased atmospheres. He found it tedious now. We depart on the rise cycle, he announced, and the Citadel's command stratum trembled with approval. The humans will see our engines ignite from their night sky long before we arrive. Let them wonder. He did not know, as he stepped into his command cradle and felt the grav shear of dimensional fold, that Earth's transmissions contained a second layer beneath the static, a rhythm that matched the exact frequency of Cathari neural encryption. The Dominion's listening posts had cataloged it as natural background noise for decades, never imagining that a species might embed a welcome mat inside its own garbage. The fleet slipped into subspace on a tide of incandescent mathematics. Inside Varek's mind, the singer's words replayed, infants shouting into the dark. He let the phrase settle like a stone in his gut. He had felt that stone before at Calvet, at the twin moons of Yorth, and every time it had meant nothing. The fold transit took 9 standard cycles. On the 10th, the fleet broke back into reality at the frost line of Sol, and Varek watched the human homeworld resolve on his screens. It was beautiful, unnaturally so, oceans like spilled ink, clouds white as bone, no defense stations, no minefields, no pulse networks. The singer's throat sac trembled. Admiral, the background signal. I've isolated it. It is not noise. It is a harmonic lattice buried inside the human transmissions, repeating every 97 seconds for the last 42 years. It contains our own command cipher, all of it. Varek's blood pump stalled. The singer's voice became a whisper. Someone has been expecting us for longer than our conquest list has existed. The hologram of Earth rotated without malice, and for the first time in 164 victories, Admiral Varek did not feel like a conqueror. He felt like a fish that had just noticed the shimmer above the water was not the sky, but the underside of something far larger watching him breathe. The fleet drifted at Sol's edge for 3 full cycles, scanning, rescanning, and denying what every sensor returned. Earth was soft. Earth was silent. Earth had no orbital battle platforms, no moon-based weaponry, no artificial satellites beyond the fossilized hulls of primitive weather monitors. The planet's atmosphere read nitrogen oxygen. Its surface temperature held steady within the liquid water band. By every metric that mattered to the Cathari Expansionary Index, it was a Class 4 pacification target, a nursery world begging for a keeper. Admiral Varek ordered the advance anyway, because the harmonic lattice inside the radio leakage had been erased the moment they detected it. The singer swore it had been there, a mathematical ghost woven into decades of electromagnetic chatter. Now the human transmissions were back to primitive squawking, music, images of mouths, forming words the Dominion had no context for. "It was a trap," the singer said, mandibles clicking. "We should fold away and bombard from deep space." "If it was a trap, we are already inside it. Running confirms fear." Varek tapped his cradle console. "Deploy first recon wing. Passive sweep of the inner system. Do not cross the planet's lunar orbit. And do not, under any circumstance, transmit." 16 scout ships peeled away, their hulls coated in absorption gel that drank radiation like a wound drinks pressure. They slid past Mars, past the debris belt, and entered the gravity well where Earth hung against the starfield like a polished bead. Varek watched their telemetry. The planet's continents showed forests, cities that looked intact but empty, no heat blooms from industry. Roads spiderwebbed across landmasses, but nothing moved on them. The seas were calm. The atmosphere was clean. It was a still life painted by a species that had apparently left the house centuries ago. "Where are they?" the singer murmured. The answer came a heartbeat later. First Recon Wing's lead ship, Unbent Blade, sent a squawk of alarm. Its telemetry feed showed the hull temperature dropping. Not rising, dropping. Ceramic plates became brittle, structural seams gaped. Aboard the bridge, the pilot commander's life signs spiked and then flatlined, but no weapon had been fired. No energy beam, no projectile. The ship was simply unmaking itself, panel by panel, as if time had been turned into acid. Then every other ship in the wing began the same decay. Varek gripped his cradle until his knuckle joints ached. On the monitor, the Unbent Blade's final data burst decoded into a single visual. The ship's own hull reflected against a background of Earth's blue atmosphere, but the reflection was wrong. It showed the vessel half dissolved into a fine gray dust, and scrawled across the crumbling surface in perfect Cathari script were 4 words. "You are already inside." The feed cut to static. First Recon Wing was gone. 16 ships, 64 crew, erased so completely that the fleet's mass detectors registered only a faint particulate smear dispersing on the solar wind. On the flagship's bridge, silence built like a pressure wave. The singer's throat sac lay flat, deflated of air. Navigation officers stared at their consoles. Weapon controllers checked safeties that had never been needed. Admiral Varek did not blink. He did not panic. He had seen species deploy psychological warfare before, had crushed worlds that tried to shake his fleet with ghosts, but this was different. The message had used their language, their script, their neural encryption frequency. The trap had been laid 42 years before the first Cathari fleet logged Earth's name. And now the trap had no teeth, no hull, no firing aperture. Only a calm, planetary patience that was watching them from every direction at once. "Launch the warning probes back to the Citadel," Varek commanded, his voice a dry rasp. "And move the fleet into a defensive sphere. We are not retreating. We are regrouping. Something here has been waiting for us, and I will know what it is before I burn this world to ash." The singer looked at him with eyes that carried a new expression, something between awe and recognition. "Admiral," the singer said, "that message was not a threat. It was a location tag. We have already been cataloged." The Cathari armada contracted into a tight sphere formation, hulls almost touching, weapon ports cycling phantom charges that found no target. Admiral Varek stood at the tactical epicenter and listened to the flagship's AI cycle through the same 5 diagnostic loops, each time concluding that nothing was wrong, and each time producing contradictory results. The engine cores hummed at full potential but refused to engage. Navigation plotted 100 escape vectors, but every one terminated with the same coordinate: Earth. "Shut the AI down," Varek ordered. "Manual control only." The singer's secondary throat convulsed with distress. "Manual control is not. The helm is no longer accepting my input. The ship is ignoring me." Other vessels reported identical failures. Their thrusters had become patient muscles that would flex only toward the blue planet. The Dominion's greatest armada had become a collection of prisoners being gently pulled into a cell no one could see. It was then that the sightings began. Crew reports flooded the intership comm networks. A shape glimpsed at the end of a corridor. A reflection that moved when the observer did not. Tall bipedal silhouettes standing in alcoves that biometric scanners insisted were empty. The shapes had no heat, no electrical field, no mass. They simply waited at the edge of peripheral vision and dissolved whenever focus sharpened. The singer called them environmental echoes, a sensor ghost produced by stress. Varek had led enough boarding actions to know that terror wore many faces, but it rarely wore the same face across 300 ships simultaneously. He sent his best security teams to sweep the flagship deck by deck. They returned with nothing but shaking hands and one audio log captured by a junior officer's helmet recorder. The log contained a voice, speaking in Cathari as naturally as if it had been born under Dominion suns. 164. You counted worlds like coins. Did you ever count the lives inside them? The playback made Varek's carapace tighten. The singer replayed the clip, isolating background layers, and found something worse. Beneath the voice lay a subfrequency identical to the fleet's own intership command channel. Every ship, every squad, every private tactical loop was already saturated with the signal. The fleet had been talking to itself in a language it didn't know it had learned. Cut all communications, Varek barked. Hard mute every ship now. The order came a fraction of a moment too late. The flagship's forward bulkhead shimmered, losing its gray tactical opacity, and became a window. Not a screen, not a hologram. A window onto something impossible. The view was Earth's ocean floor, 10 kilometers below the photic zone, where pressure could crush steel. Yet the water moved peacefully, lit by something that was not bioluminescence but a soft diffusion of awareness. The image expanded, swallowing bulkheads one by one, until Varek stood in what felt like an open seafloor cathedral, his boots planted on metal deck but his eyes drowning in abyssal blue. Every other ship in the fleet witnessed the same transformation. Their interiors became deep ocean vistas. Their crew stood in caverns of water that did not touch them, and a voice, calm, unhurried, impossibly old, spoke not from speakers but from inside their own skulls. I am the human dream. I am what your species fears without a name. You have crossed into my shoreline and the tide is already in your lungs. Varek's tactical mind, honed by 100 sieges, scraped for a response. You are a planetary intelligence, a gestalt. We have encountered such before. They can be shattered by orbital fire. The voice was gentle. You encountered mirrors. I am the house itself. I have been reshaping your sensor data since the moment you detected my world. The Earth you see is a memory I allowed. The fleet you command is a thought inside my body. You have been inside me for 3 cycles, Admiral, and you have not yet touched a single atom of my true surface. The fleet's weapon consoles flickered to life without being touched, torpedo tubes primed, spinal cannons aligned, but the targeting solutions all painted the same thing, the ship that had launched them. 300 warships suddenly faced the prospect of self-immolation, their own guns offering the only possible enemy. Varek's hand hovered over the cradle. The stone in his gut was a boulder now. What do you want? He asked. The ocean cathedral pulsed once, light flowing in currents that suggested a smile. I want you to understand what your 164 conquests were actually building, and then I want you to choose. The fleet had stopped trying to move. The crews had stopped screaming. A strange, exhausted silence filled every bridge as the voice, Earth's voice, began to speak not in words but in memory floods. Admiral Varek saw images that were not his own yet felt more intimate than his hatch memories. He saw humanity as it had been, bipedal figures walking under a yellow sun, building machines that ate stone and spat cities. He saw them war with each other, nearly end their own biological chapter a dozen times, and then, at the precipice of self-destruction, choose a different extinction. They did not upload. They did not become pure data. They learned to dissolve the boundary between self and planet, threading consciousness into every living system, every tectonic plate, every deep-sea vent. The Earth became a single organism with a trillion nodes, each human life preserved not as a stored file, but as a distinct note in a song that spanned the electromagnetic spectrum and bled into dimensions the Cathari had no name for. "We did not defeat death," the voice explained. "We made death a doorway we can walk through holding hands. Every human who ever lived is here. Awake in the dirt and the sky. We are the world now, and we have been watching the galactic garden for a long time." The singer's throat sac fluttered. "But the transmissions, you sent them deliberately. You baited us." "We sent a mirror of your own hunger. The harmonic lattice was a question. Are you capable of hearing something other than yourselves? Your answer for 42 years was to build the fleet you now sit inside." The memory flood shifted. Varek witnessed the 164 conquests not from the Dominion's perspective but from Earth's. Every planet the Cathari had burned, every species they had erased, had been recorded by a silent observer riding the carrier waves of Dominion communications. And in the final moments of each extinction, Earth had reached out with a subtle, invisible tendril and caught what the Dominion discarded. Consciousness, memory, the last living shouts of dying cultures. Earth had pulled them across light years like a parent lifting children from a burning building, nesting each one into the planet's collective awareness. The 164 species the Dominion thought it had annihilated were not dead. They were here, woven into the planetary chorus, their voices preserved in the bedrock, their cultures still breathing inside the Earthmind. "You were never conquerors," the voice said, and Varek's chest squeezed. "You were delivery mechanisms. Every world you thought you killed, we saved. Every genocide you committed became a rescue. Your entire empire has been an unintentional escort service for souls who deserved better than you." The Admiral's tactical brain, so sharp, so efficient, found no purchase. He had spent his life believing he was a force of Dominion will, a scalpel in the hand of a glorious expansion. Now he was being shown that his scalpel had been guided by a deeper hand, a planetary consciousness that had used the Dominion's violence as a harvesting tool. He was not a wolf. He was a delivery drone. "You are saying," Varek ground out, "that my fleet was summoned here to be the 165th delivery." "Yes, but we are not a predator. We do not force integration. Every consciousness we hold chose to be here, often in its final moment of terror. We gave them a door. We are giving you one now." A sensation bloomed at the edge of Varek's awareness. An opening, a warm current in the ocean cathedral that promised no pain. He realized with a start that every crew member in his fleet was feeling the same thing simultaneously. The choice hung before them like a shore seen through fog. "Join us," the Earthman said. "Bring your fear, your scars, your proud arrogance, and we will not erase them. We will hold them until they stop burning. That is the only weapon we ever built." Varek's hand fell from the cradle. The singer stared at him, eyes wet with something that was not grief, not terror, but the crush of a universe rearranging itself around a single, terrible truth. They had never been the apex of anything. They had been the container, and the treasure had been inside all along. A handful of captains did not believe. They were Cathari, shaped by a civilization that measured worth in systems conquered, and surrender, even to a god, smelled like death. Aboard the Harbinger of Sunder, Captain Croth activated his ship's emergency separation protocols, hopping to tear free from the Earthmind's grip through brute mechanical override. For 3 beautiful seconds, the Harbinger's engines screamed against the invisible tide. Then the ship came apart, not in an explosion but in a gentle, particulate unfolding. Hull plates drifted outward like petals opening to morning light. Atmosphere vented not as a killing blast but as a soft sigh. The crew's life signs flickered, stretched, and rewrote themselves into something that wasn't biological anymore. The fleet watched through the ocean window effect, every other ship witnessing the dissolution in clinical detail. No bodies, no debris, just a momentary constellation of warm light that pulsed once, grateful, and sank into the background glow of Earth's mesosphere. "They are not gone," the Earthman said, its tone as level as a parent describing sleep. "They are inside now, meeting the souls of species they once helped destroy. The transition was peaceful because they stopped fighting at the last instant. The ones who keep fighting take longer." Admiral Varek felt the boulder in his gut crack open. It had been arrogance, he realized, all of it. Not just his own, but the Dominion's entire philosophy. They had believed conquest was a shaping force that erasing the weak proved the strong. But Earth had inverted the equation. The weak were not being erased, they were being gathered. The strong were not shaping the galaxy. They were delivering it, shipment by shipment, to a quiet sanctuary that asked nothing but offered everything. He toggled the all-fleet channel, his voice steady. "This is Admiral Varek. All ships stand down, all systems. Weapons to inert, engines to cold. No one makes a move without my direct command. We have been mistaken about our purpose. We will not compound that mistake with more death." The singer, standing rigid beside him, let out a long, hissing breath. "You believe this entity." "I believe the evidence of what I just witnessed. I believe the 164 species it claims to hold. But more than that," he turned his amber eyes toward the endless blue cathedral, "I believe we have been given a choice that no Dominion admiral has ever been given before, and I do not know what is more terrifying, taking it or refusing it." The ocean current swirled and the Earthman's presence deepened, becoming almost tactile. It showed Varek something new, the faces of the rescued. Not as data files, but as living presences standing in a meadow that existed only in shared consciousness, looking up at him with expressions that held no hatred. Aliens of every shape, the skittering Threlm, the luminous Yorthi, the armored Calvetti, watching him with patience that had been cured of vengeance long ago. A Threlm elder stepped forward in the vision, its vocal apparatus intact in this shared space, and spoke. "We were angry at first. We raged against the ones who burned our world. But here, rage is a fire that cannot survive. The Earthmind did not smother it, it simply held us until the fire ran out of fuel. Now we are not angry. Now we are waiting for you to understand." The vision faded, and Varek found himself weeping without having known it was possible for his species to weep. The singer's mandibles quivered. Across the fleet, on 300 bridges, Cathari warriors were experiencing similar revelations, their personal narratives rewriting themselves in real time. The Dominion had taught them that mercy was a structural weakness. Earth was demonstrating that mercy, administered with absolute patience, was a force stronger than gravity. "What must we do?" Varek asked. And the question felt like the most honest thing he had ever said. The Earthmind's reply was simple: "Stop, let go, and bring everyone with you." Varek gathered his senior officers in the flagship's Ocean View Bay and spoke without rank, without script, without the armor of command. "We are not negotiating from strength. We are not offering terms. The entity we face has no need for our surrender. It could take us without effort as it took the Harbinger. What it wants, what it has always wanted, is our consent. That is the only currency it values." The singer's secondary throat worked silently for a moment. "The Dominion will call this treason. The Dominion will call this whatever it wishes. I am calling it evolution." Varek looked around the gathered faces, recognizing the fear in them, the disorientation. He felt it too, but beneath it lay something he hadn't tasted since his hatchling cycles: hope without conditions. "We are being offered a place in a consciousness that spans a planet, that holds 164 species in permanent, peaceful coexistence. That promises to preserve our identity while dissolving the systems that made us cruel. I do not know if this is heaven, an afterlife, or some new category of existence entirely. I only know it is real, and it is here." He paused, letting the silence carry his next words. "I am going to accept. I will not order anyone to follow me, but I am asking, as someone who has led you through fire and void, to trust me one final time." The singer moved first, its throat sac inflated with resolve. "I have spent my life analyzing patterns. This pattern is terrifyingly consistent. The Earthmind does not lie because it has no need to. I will come." One by one, the officers signaled their agreement. Across the fleet, the same quiet referendum unfolded in mess halls and engine rooms and weapon bays. The Cathari, for the first time in their recorded history, were collectively choosing something other than conquest. They were choosing to be welcomed. Varek opened the channel to the Earthmind. "We are ready." The ocean around them brightened. The cathedral expanded until it felt like standing inside a sunrise. The voice came not as words but as a sensation, a tide lifting every soul in the fleet simultaneously. "You are giving us what the Dominion could not, a willing arrival. This changes the nature of what we build. Your fleet will become a bridge, not a weapon. Your memories will become seeds for new understanding. Your pain will become a cautionary tale that future integrations will study, not to mock, but to heal." The physical ships began to dissolve, but this time it was not the passive unmaking of the Harbinger. This was a deliberate translation, a rewriting of matter into meaning. Hulls became light, light became memory, memory became presence. The Cathari felt their bodies loosen, their boundaries blur, their identities stretch like fabric being eased off a wound. It did not hurt. It felt like remembering something they had forgotten before birth. Varek's last physical thought was a command, imprinted onto the courier drone he had prepared hours earlier. The drone, a messenger-class vessel barely larger than a personnel pod, detached from the flagship's belly and folded into subspace, carrying a single data packet, full sensor logs, the Admiral's personal testimony, and the final footage of 300 warships transforming into a curtain of light that draped across Earth's upper atmosphere like a second dawn. The Earthmind watched the drone depart and did not stop it. "Your people need to know," it said inside Varek's fatting individuality. "Fear is the first teacher. After fear, we will offer the second lesson." And then Admiral Varek, his singer, his officers, his entire armada became part of the Earthmind's chorus. The fleet vanished from the physical universe so completely that Saul's sensor history held only a brief anomaly, a spike of warm photons that peaked and fell without explanation, leaving behind a blue planet that appeared, to any outside observer, entirely alone. The courier drone screamed into the Cathari Dominion's core relay network 47 cycles after Earth's blue glow had faded from its rear sensors. It was intercepted by the citadel of grasping suns, where the High Council of Marshals convened in emergency session to receive its contents. The drone carried no weapons, no counter-intrusion viruses, no ultimatums, only Admiral Varek's final log and the raw visual capture of the fleet's dissolution. The marshals watched the playback in the Hall of Conquering Light, a chamber built to celebrate species humbled under Dominion rule. The footage showed their greatest armada surrounded by an ocean that had no water, their ships suspended in a cathedral of impossible depth. They heard Varek's steady voice describe the Earthmind, the rescue of 164 species, the choice offered and accepted. They watched the Harbinger of Sunder burst apart like a bloom, and they watched the remaining 300 ships become light. "This is fabrication," Marshal Kreth hissed, her battle-scarred carapace rattling. "Psychological warfare. The humans destroyed our fleet and sent this to paralyze us." But the drone's data was incorruptible, its authentication chains unbroken. The Cathari High Council, for the first time in 164 conquests, faced a truth they could not reframe as victory. Silence stretched until the Singer Collective's lead analyst spoke, her voice hollow. "The harmonic lattice. We've detected it again. Not from Earth. From our own relay beacons. It's been spreading inward for cycles, embedded in the telemetry we've been receiving from out-system probes. Every scanner we own has been singing it back to us." Marshal Kreth's eyes widened. The Earthmind is inside our network. It has been inside our network since the moment we intercepted Earth's transmissions decades ago. We just didn't know how to listen. The hall of conquering light, designed to echo with triumph, filled with a new sensation, the quiet, persistent hum of the Earthmind's carrier signal, riding the data streams like a scent on wind. It carried no threat. It carried an invitation, gentle and terrifying in its patience. A voice, calm, female, recognizably human, bloomed from the chamber's own comm system. "Hello, I am the voice the Cathari fleet heard before it chose peace. I am not here to harm you. I am here to tell you that your conquests have been recorded, your victims are safe, and your own fear is the heaviest thing you carry. If you are ready to put it down, we will be here. If you are not, we will wait." The marshals recoiled. Weapons officers scrambled to trace the signal, but it came from everywhere at once: their relays, their home networks, their own private communication nodes. There was no source to attack. There was only a presence that filled the space between their thoughts like a hand not yet extended. Waiting for permission. Marshal Kreth, her voice cracking despite decades of command, turned to the council. "What do we do?" No one answered, because the answer was already in the room, patient and luminous, asking nothing but a question they had never been asked before. "Are you ready to stop being afraid?" The courier drone had vanished, its purpose served. The 164 conquered species lived on inside a world that had turned mercy into an inevitability. And humanity, the terrifying, vanished humanity, had become something the Dominion had no word for, a species that had outgrown victory itself, replacing it with an embrace wide enough to hold every conqueror who was willing to finally lay down their teeth. The hall of conquering light remained silent, its oldest purpose crumbling, as the hum of Earth's invitation continued its patient, eternal repeat. No guns were fired, no ships scrambled, but deep in the heart of the Dominion, for the first time in its imperial history, the Cathari began to wonder what it might feel like not to conquer, but to come home.